What's going on? I just finished watching this crazy freaking bad debate between Frank Tofu and Vegan Gains. Really hard to watch. Yeah, I'm a little bit pissed off, I have to say, that I wasted so much of my lifetime for this stuff. I mean, I didn't watch the whole thing, of course. I just watched, 30 minutes. And then I just switched back to the beginning because I entered it midway. And switched back to the beginning because I actually wanted to see the openers. The openers are always some good stuffs where they can talk without getting interrupted by the other one. And so, I wanted to get the openers in. And now, since I think that this is actually the best part of this debate, this was the best part of the debate, I want to share some additional comments on that stuff, on the openers. It's really astonishing to me how bad debaters the carnivores actually are, And, when we talk about Vegan Gains being a quote-unquote good debater, I want to share some comments on that as well. Some alternative view on that maybe. But anyway, let's start with the opener. Frank had a powerful opener actually. It was very common sense based and very biologically oriented. Vegans will now say, "Oh no, that's an appeal to nature fallacy." But I mean, something that came about over the course of evolution, and evolution had a lot of time to work things out, It can't be that wrong. Now we could argue, and this was also part of the opening debate, what is our evolutional history? Did we eat meat in the past, or were we maybe, frugivores or omnivores or even herbivores or stuff like that? And I will try to go a little bit into detail here in that as well. Just basically want to share some additional information for people here who would like to get a little bit more out of this debate than what they got in these last 2 hours of crazy, sissy talk, left, right, center. It was really hard to watch. But anyway, without further ado, Frank had a powerful opener, and he effed up after that really quickly. So what he should have done, after he dropped that opener, which did not require him any studies whatsoever. He just stated some basic, mechanisms, some basic facts about our gut physiology, and really good stuff. Also, when do carnivores wean their young? They wean sooner because they get higher density animal foods, higher nutrient density animal foods in, whereas herbivores, they wean later because these grasses and stuff like that are hard to digest. And it is the same with us humans, when we take a lifetime into account of 100 years. All very good stuff, really detailed informations. And I have to say, one or the other thing that I myself wasn't even aware about. But what he should have done afterwards was, insisting on keeping the debate like that, debating without studies. Now, you will say, well, what kind of shitty debate would that be, without using any study? Where is the scientific evidence? But I will ask you, how did people debate before the era of overabundance of not only useless but often just wrong knowledge in terms of studies? I mean, how did ancient Greeks debate? This is basically the origin of debating, These philosophers, Greek philosophers, just sitting in their temples or whatever, and looking at each other, the gang of the one guy behind the gang of the other guy, and then debating, and basically just using their common sense. They just used their common sense. There were no studies, and certainly no internet full of bullcrap, to use Vegan Gains words here. A Greek debate was basically a competition in which you had to prove that you have the better common sense than your opponent, and a greater alignment of your personal reality with actual reality. And it is still done that way, actually, in some Buddhist monasteries, for example, where the pupils debate each other on, topics like life, religion, and ethics, and all that stuff, This is not, we are not reinventing the wheel here, This modern YouTube debate style with all the studies is a complete disgrace to the whole sports, actually. Especially in a subject like nutrition, where already everybody knows that there are studies conflicting each other permanently, and there will be no conclusion, therefore, which is only study based. If you lead a nutrition debate based on studies, you will always have the one guy pull out one study and then the other guy pull out another study, trying to conflict with that study. And of course these studies conflict because these are basic conflicts of interest. There's just too much money in nutrition, and nutrition is just too much of a blurry subject, to study, because there are too many chemicals interacting with each other. And Vegan Gains' first move was to talk 1 minute about how humans cook their food, because Frankie boy, he made the argument that, we developed smaller jaws because we went over to a more meat-based diet, which is actually a pretty good argument, considering that probably before we ate meats, we were, more into the roots and into the nuts and into the leaves and stuff like that. And these things require a mighty jaw to crack open those nuts, to get to the nutrients of these roots and leaves. Just simply take a look at a gorilla. These are mighty jaws and mighty teeth for grinding that stuff up. We couldn't do it in the wild nowadays with our pathetic little jaws, but we could afford, degenerating these jaws to a certain degree because we got higher density foods in, probably. And what are higher density foods? Well, probably animal foods. He said, because of cooking we got smaller jaws. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna simply state here why. First of all, our last common ancestor with apes that we had was the chimpanzee. With the modern great apes, all the other relatives that we had in the meantime died out, and we are, so to say, the only survivor of that part of the tree, so to say. Although there is quite conflicting evidence there as well, so you got to be careful here with these assumptions. But anyway, our last common ancestor, chimpanzee, I think 6.8 million years ago or something. And before that, we had a common ancestor with the gorilla, which dates back, I think, 8.8 million years ago. So this is a long ass time. There's plenty of enough time to adapt a digestive system to a new lifestyle. Especially considering that the digestive system is one of the, evolutionary speaking, most malleable tissues, because food variety and food abundance can vary greatly from time to time. Maybe there's one little colder year for some year, and then there's almost no insects or whatever, to eat, and then you have to eat 1 year only plants. And on the other hand, there is abundance in another year, and your microflora, especially if you're an omnivore, has to be able to adapt to these stimuli. And of course, we develop these abilities as well. You can change your gut flora, essentially in a year, probably just by changing your diet, even nowadays. So it is not completely wrong to say that we probably adapted pretty hardcore in the meantime, since we split up with the chimpanzees 6.8 million years ago. But anyway, he said, Vegan Gains said something like this change in jaw structure is because we started cooking our food. Well, we are cooking our food since maybe 100,000 years. Okay, this is the time margin that we're talking about here, and 100,000 years is nothing against 6.8 million years, and even chimpanzees, they eat quite a substantial amount of animal products. Actually, they hunt. They go in their tribes and they hunt down meat on a regular basis. It's actually pretty fascinating. Vegans won't talk about that because it destroys their agenda a little bit, but this is actually, this biological fact. So after presenting this cooking and jaw argument, he basically just starts with pulling out the first study, because that's basically all Vegan Gains can do. He can just pull out study after study, which is his biggest support, because frankly there are a lot of studies supporting the vegan diet, supporting plant-based diets. And he has already years of experience, in this completely disgusting style of debating. And you can clearly see how he, already pulls out these studies out of his mind, because he literally has a study in his head already against every single, argument that is presented to him. And he doesn't, lead these debates for the first time. Again, he has experience with that. So somehow the discussion moves over to saturated fats. He says, Vegan Gains, I think, claims saturated fats trigger inflammation in the body. Sorry, but why would that be the case? This is total BS. I don't need to read any studies to be able to disprove that. A body always tries to keep inflammation at a minimum if there is no reason to, turn on inflammation, like, for example, a injury or a sickness or a cleansing process. Cleansing process meaning that there is some strain of bacteria, working down on some unhealthy cells or some toxins or whatever. And then this area is a little bit upregulated in terms of cell division and stuff, and this requires inflammation. But it actually costs energy, and it costs capacity of your immune system, it costs capacity of your nutrients, it probably costs in the end a little bit of lifetime of that tissue even. But it's an investment in more time later on for that tissue to be healthier, So this is why the body has this tool, inflammation, to upregulate this certain area of the body if something is wrong with it. Now, if saturated fats would cause inflammation, then we would be inflamed all the freaking time, okay? Because saturated fats are literally everywhere in our body. Now, the argument could be, well, okay, saturated fats cause inflammation when they are in their bloodstream, when they are in our bloodstream. I don't know if Vegan Gains exactly phrased it like that, but this is probably what he would have said to me if I would present this argument to him. And I would argue saturated fats are in our bloodstream all the freaking time, okay? Because we are permanently building up fatty tissue, chewing down on fatty tissue. If you're fasting, then we are, upregulating the fatty acids in our bloodstream, and it would be completely stupid by our body to react with an inflammatory response to a biochemical which is this abundant in itself. Okay, sorry, but it doesn't make any sense. I don't need to read any study to dispute that. And then he goes on about how this is actually an argument, why evolutionary we haven't relied on animal-based diets, never in our history or whatever. He says that maybe we ate some meat from time to time because we had to survive, but in the great scheme of things, we, relied on plant-based diets, which is complete nonsense. It is complete nonsense. Then why the hell are, wild tribes in the Amazon, in the South Americas, still hunting, In the rainforest of the South Americas, there's plenty of plant foods available, fruits, roots, whatnot, everything. And they also eat that stuff from time to time, okay? I give him that. They eat that stuff from time to time. But they hunt predominantly. I bet they get most of their calories actually from animal products still. So why is this the case? If viewed from an evolutionary perspective, if plant nutrition would be so superior from a health-wise outcome compared to an animal nutrition, then how is it that these tribes who have still access to both still go more after the animal products than after anything else? How can you explain that? From an evolutionary perspective, they would have switched their diets already a long time ago, because it would have increased their fitness to survive so much, that they couldn't do anything else, But this is not the case, of course. This is not the case. In fact, we are, so much the opposite, that we can survive in an environment completely without plants, where there's only animal food available, And we do so quite astonishingly well from a health perspective. But of course, only as long as these animal products are predominantly wild-caught, Most of it is consumed raw. And these control groups, which you could test for a study, they don't even exist nowadays anymore. So yeah, we had to eat meat to survive. That's correct, but we also eat meat because it's just there. We also eat meat if we don't. We don't need to survive on if we have plants available. So at some point he goes on to the American Dietetics Association and states that the largest food association in the world recommends vegan diets for all the stages of the life cycle. Isn't it wonderful? The vegan diets it is so healthy, and it only needs to be managed properly, and then it's gonna work for everybody essentially, even for infants, even for breastfeeding mothers, even for pregnant mothers, whatever. Just vegan diets are awesome. They're gonna help you in all these stages of life. Now, I would like to remind vegans of a time when they were the minority, and they were the small hippie dummies who were against the system. The big guys, the big guys like your paleo, keto, and all that big diet groups which they criticized, and of course also the government who wants to keep their people unhealthy, and giving out wrong food pyramids with all these animal products and stuff like that. So in recent times, we see an interesting phenomenon. All these big institutions jump essentially on board. And he says it himself. The biggest dietetics association of the world said that vegan diets are adequate, blah, blah, blah. I mean, doesn't this spark any sort of skepsis or whatever in his brain? That's my question here. Could it be that there is a bias in these guys, in these authors of these studies? Could it be that there is money involved, and actually a lot of it probably? This is just so hypocritical, I think. Criticizing the big institutions as long as they are against your opinion, but as soon as they jump on the bandwagon, now everybody is promoting a vegan diet basically from above. Now all these things are good. The American Dietetics Association is good because it recommends a vegan diet. This is just such a one-sided view of things. So next he goes on to hammering heart disease and diabetes, which are of course the number one scapegoat, so to say, why eating meat is bad, because it causes heart disease, of course, and diabetes. Why? Because of the cholesterol, of course, the saturated fat and cholesterol, which clogs your arteries and gives you the metabolic syndrome, right? And next thing he says is, and now give me please a moment to pull up a few studies here. Just so stupid. And then Frank keeps going on with nonsense about cholesterol. From there on, it goes pretty much downhill rapidly with this debate. Cholesterol is a very complex molecule, a very complex organic compound involved in very complex metabolic pathways, and the reason being is that cholesterol has a huge amount of tasks in the animal body. It is in fact one of the most important organic compounds probably which make an animal body work like it works, because it is a lubricant, it influences the fluidity of your cell membrane, it allows your cells actually to move, it allows all of these vesicles, all of these little cell organelles, is that it allows them to stay fluid in a greater range of temperature. It is really a great molecule. It is like a fatty little lubricant, but that's not everything. It is also a basic substrate for a lot of hormones, for other substances in the body. It really is probably, if you could say so, the number one organic molecule that whose presence distinguishes animals from plants, okay? Because plants do not have cholesterol. Plants are just standing still. The solidity, so to say, of their cell walls, of their cell membranes. Their cell membranes are supported by cell walls, okay? So they uphold their structure like that. We can't do that. Our cell membranes, our structure is upheld via proteins actually, and via our mere cell membranes. And cholesterol plays a huge role in the consistency of these cell membranes. Okay, so it is really what makes us animals. It is what allows us to be mobile, to move around our body parts. As you can see, plants, they don't really move a lot. I mean, they can move, but they are not as agile, they are not as vivid as we are, as quick. And another thing is that cholesterol is probably very likely actually affected by heat. Okay, so there is heat damaged cholesterol, quote unquote, and then there is raw cholesterol, quote unquote, and it probably makes a hell of a difference if you consume raw cholesterol or heat treated cholesterol all the time. And this ties into what I said before. Where are your control groups? Where are the control groups who consume a raw animal-based diet consisting of wild-caught animal products? These control groups don't exist, and this is why basically any study on nutrition is useless, because you cannot compare to a natural diet, which is actually, which is probably our purpose to eat, at least by large, a high percent of the time. Now, additionally to all of that regarding cholesterol, cholesterol measurements are inaccurate as hell, plus values, serum values, jump up and down like the freaking stock market over the course of a single day already. So in order to get a reliable value, you need to measure multiple times. This is expensive. Did the study do that? Did a study do that actually? Additionally, if all cholesterol levels are high, we could actually also debate whether high cholesterol levels are actually bad or not, because as we've just heard, cholesterol fulfills a hell lot of functions in the body. And actually you could argue, well, having high cholesterol levels means that all these functions are very saturated, right? They work pretty well. Now, of course, the main argument of the vegans is that high cholesterol clogs your arteries. Now, the thing is that cholesterol is probably one of the first guys to come to an inflamed area to help with this increased cell division, which we've talked about before, to help these new cell membranes to stay fluid, also to help these, very, very fluid and malleable immune cells to get to the area, get rid of those toxins, get rid of those byproducts which these bacteria created when they did their janitory tasks. Now, the thing is, these immune cells, they have to squeeze themselves through, tiny little slots between other cells which are there. And in order to be that malleable, they have to actually have a very high cholesterol content. And that's what they are, these white little, blood cells. They are really high in cholesterol. Cholesterol is one of the first guys to really go towards these inflamed areas in the body. And one of these very commonly inflamed areas is actually the arterial wall, probably because of too crazy blood sugar fluctuations, blood sugar swings in the end, which are caused by the metabolic syndrome, which are caused by wrong diet, too many carbohydrates, especially too many sugars, too many quickly assimilated carbohydrates. And this is just another theory on how, something like heart disease and diabetes and the metabolic syndrome in general comes into place. And for me personally, this makes a lot of sense actually. This makes a lot of sense. Makes much more sense than a organic compound, which is just super abundant in our body anyway, just turns against you and decides, to plaque down your arteries so that you die of a stroke or a heart attack. This doesn't make any sense to me. It really makes sense for me to say, okay, this organic compound actually tries to do something for you, but it is misguided. It is essentially, forced to do these not so good effects for you because you're injuring your arterial wall permanently. And this is also how you slowly over time, inflame your body to a degree systemically. And then, of course, we can talk about other systemic diseases like cancer and all that stuff, which come about like that, So anyway, even if all cholesterol levels are high, you could still argue, well, your body is just trying to heal itself, you know? And then again, is it the bad cholesterol? And I mean bad cholesterol in terms of, is it oxidized? Is it cooked? You know, was it heated? Or is it raw, you know, raw cholesterol from a raw egg yolk or whatever, which is just basically the same as the cholesterol that you can utilize and can and should probably incorporate into your cell membranes. Now, in terms of good, quote unquote, and bad cholesterol, I would like to add that the LDL cholesterol, the low density lipoprotein, is the quote unquote bad cholesterol because it is associated with the transport into the system, from the liver to the system. And the HDL, the high density lipoprotein, is quote unquote good because it's, you know, represented by the transport back to the liver from the system. So what doctors assume is essentially if the transport from your liver into the system is greater than the transport from the system to the liver, from where it is essentially excreted and degraded, then this overflow of cholesterol must end up somewhere, right? And it's probably ending up in your system and probably in your arteries. So if your flow into the system is greater than the backflow, you are developing basically atherosclerosis over time. Now the thing is that, for example, when you're switching to a raw animal-based diet, I've heard from people whose cholesterol levels skyrocketed after that because the body somehow decided to exchange a lot of its cholesterol molecules with these raw cholesterol molecules, you know. This is yet again also something which makes some sense if you hear it, but of course this is completely unprovable by any, you know, study or paper because there's not even established whether there are different forms of cholesterol. Of the cholesterol molecule, not of the cholesterol transport systems like LDL and HDL. But anyway, total cholesterol, you know, if it's high or not, it does basically tell you exactly nothing about your health state. And if your LDL is higher than your HDL, you know, relation-wise, you could argue that this means that cholesterol is deposited in your system, and if you are suffering from things like metabolic syndrome, obesity, and stuff like that, then there is a high chance actually that this cholesterol is killing you in the process of, but actually trying to help you. But because of your shitty lifestyle, you are basically destroying yourself despite that. So anyway, that's just the first 20 minutes, the comments on the first 20 minutes of this incredibly bad debate. I just wanted to share some additional information here. Please, consider sharing it if you know someone who wants to get something from this debate as well. Certainly crazy. Honestly, sometimes I think about if vegan gains only would debate me, this could be a really interesting conversation. But of course, I would say no studies whatsoever. Only common sense. Just common sense is allowed, and it is pretty damn hard to lose a debate like that, especially if you have the truth on your side. And this is something that is always so. This gives me goosebumps, honestly, when people lose debates, although they actually have the truth on their sides, but they are just too dumb to articulate it, or they just go down the completely wrong road in terms of the debate in general, like all this study stuff. As I said, studies are pretty useless when it comes to understanding nutrition. For the given reasons. We rather have to look on biological mechanisms, how does the work biologically, how does the body work biologically, I want to say. What are the differences between herbivores, plant eaters, and omnivores and meat eaters? What are their ecological purposes in the ecological network? What are their living spaces? Where can we live as humans? And a little bit of understanding of history and stuff like that wouldn't hurt as well. And then you already get pretty close to the truth, actually. Anyway, that's it for now. Bye.